And you're very welcome back here to the Agriland tent at the National Ploughing Championships in Ratheniska in County Laois. We're in the middle of day 2 and we're bringing you the latest in our series of live podcasts from the Agriland stage this week at the ploughing. And today we are focusing on talking about the future with young farmers. And of course, the issue of generational renewal, it has become very topical, particularly in recent times with the announcement by the Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Charlie McConalogue, that he was going to establish a commission for generational renewal. But that's not all we're going to be talking about with our panel of young farmers. I'm delighted to be joined on the stage by Elaine Houlihan, the president of Macra. Thank you so much for joining us. To her left, we have Donal Phelan, who is a young farmer who has benefited from Macra's land mobility service. And beside him is Rob Lally, who's a young farmer from County Mayo. You're all very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us and coming in from the sunshine. Elaine, we couldn't get a much different ploughing than last year. By God, we were pushing cars out of car parks last year, and this year we're slapping on the sunscreen.
Completely. It's completely changed. I remember somebody asked me today when we were taking a photo, we're like, what should I wear? And I was like, it makes no difference, wear whatever, because last year it was waterproofs and wellies.
Yeah.
Like, it's so different, but the mood is just brilliant out there among people.
Yeah, because it has been a challenging year. I mean, it's a challenging year for farmers of all age groups, Elaine, and it's not to take from it. It's great, as you said, the atmosphere is buzzy here, but it has been a tricky year.
It's been an extremely challenging year, to be very honest. Like, we had the longest winter, we had a hard spring, and currently there's farmers out there that are in dire straits now on fodder again. We have a lot of our members currently feeding silage at night. Look, in my 28 years of existence, it was my first time ever seeing the back of our silage pit this winter.
Yeah.
It was the first time ever seeing the wall. So it's been extremely challenging. But look, in Macra, we've been proactive. Rob sits on our Ag Affairs Committee. We've been extremely proactive, helping people with their fodder budget. We're also, I suppose, our big thing in Macra is we're very mindful of people's mental health when it comes to all these challenging times for the farming community.
Absolutely. We might return to that in a little bit, but I suppose I did mention that we're talking about the future of farming, Elaine, and I know that you have a bunch of pre-budget asks, like all of the farm organisations. We're in that countdown to October 1st when Minister Jack Chambers is going to reveal how he's going to spend all of the taxpayers' money for next year. I'm imagining that succession, and that's something that Macra has been very strong on. It might be something that other farm organisations have spoken on, but it is something that Macra has been very keenly focused on when it comes to young farmers.
Yeah, no, completely. For the last decade, Macra has been the one beating the drum for succession. We started the land mobility service and see how much that has helped young and old farmers. As we're saying to our government, we need support now around succession. We're after getting the Commission of Generation Renewal. Look, I'll be very honest with you, we welcome it. Do I have concerns about it? Yes, I do. Am I worried that it's going to be a political talking shop, especially with the election coming up? Certainly, because I feel if our government were going to take a more proactive approach on generation renewal, we would have the finer details of that commission, because that should be accelerated. We cannot wait to 2027.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do we have any template? Do we have any idea? We had an announcement.
Absolutely nothing. It was our first time hearing about it as I sat up in the band stage at Tullamore Show. That was the first time we heard that this commission was going to be put in place. Again, we cannot wait till 2027. We have to secure my generation's future in agriculture to actually have a younger generation to actually take over farms, to ensure that we have a future in agriculture here in Ireland.
Young farmers are immigrating. They're leaving this country because they either feel they can't get into farming or they can't access land. And we'll talk about the work of the Land Mobility Service. But it is very stark out there for a lot of young farmers, and they're making those tough choices.
Yes, they are making them tough choices, because when you think of it, any career, if you go to college, the one thing when you're finished, you want to look into that crystal ball. You want to be able to say, okay, I've 10 years in this profession. For me, I'm also a physio. Like, I know that my job's secure. When it comes to farming, you look into that crystal ball and you're looking to see 2 years ahead. And people want to see that certainty. People want to see that there is viability in the sector to continue. They're not just going to Australia and Canada. They're also going to the cities. There's parents out there that are actively encouraging their children not to take over the family farm too, because they don't want their children to be burdened in the debt or the uncertainty that's around farming at the moment. Until we get concrete, I suppose, certainty And once our government show that they are going to support us, it is vital in this budget that's been delivered by Minister Chambers that they show that they are supporting the farmers, because that is what we need right now. The farmers have always been here in Ireland to support Ireland, but we need support now back.
Okay, and before I talk to the lads, I'm just going to mention as well, of course, this is a live podcast. It's interactive here with the floor in Agriland in the tent. So we will be taking questions a little bit later on. So if anybody has any questions for our panel or wants to make a statement about the state of farming for young farmers in this country, we'd be delighted to hear from you. Donal, I'm going to bring you in here. Donal Phelan, you're farming down in Kilkenny.
Yeah.
You've availed of the Land Mobility Service.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your background firstly and how you came to the Land Mobility Service.
We started with the Land Mobility Service. We done a contract rearing first on the home farm. There's about between 25 and 30 acres there. And that's how we came in contact with the Land Mobility. And then I got approached about the farm, and I said we'd go through the Land Mobility to do the lease and stuff like that on it.
So it works by partnering, say, a farmer like you who is looking for land with a farmer who may not have a successor. So in your case, it's Paddy Walsh.
Paddy Walsh,
yeah.
And we approached Land Mobility, and we done the lease. We drew it out. We talked it through, and they were very helpful in all the questions we had, and with Paddy. And Paddy was worried about what could happen and stuff. But
I mean, there's probably a bit of trepidation, because I mean, you're not family, you're not connected, you're meeting a stranger essentially. And how did that dynamic work?
Yeah, no, it went well in fairness. And any questions we had, they had the answer. They knew. We had it all drew out on the lease and stuff like that. So it went well.
And tell us about the type of farming you're doing now with Paddy.
So doing a calf to beef system. We have a tillage, and I do contract rearing as well, and I do a small bit of contract and on hire as well. So I do. Bring calves, we rear calves and bring them to beef, sell some of them as far as stores, bring the rest of them to beef. We're in the Beef 2020 Club. We have malt and barley, gluten-free oats, feed beans, and what's it? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you've enough going on, it sounds like, to be honest with you. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of competition for land out there, Donal. We've heard it very often, of course. There's pressure from the dairy sector. We're trying to increase our forestry area. We're trying to increase our tillage area. But they're only making so much land. They're not making any more. That's really, that's the nuts and bolts of it. So essentially for you, if you didn't access the Land Mobility Service, what would have the future have been for you?
It wouldn't have been. As simple as that. There was no fighting going out in the market for it.
Would you have left farming, do you think?
Probably would, yeah.
It's as stark as that?
Yeah, I'd probably, or else expanded on the contracting side of it.
Yeah.
And kept the contract rearing going at home. So but I don't think I would have done any. I wouldn't have went out. I wouldn't have had a chance to go out. I know. There's no.
And that's your passion, farming is what you always wanted to do.
Yeah,
so
no different.
No different. This is it. Rob, I'm going to bring you in here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You're farming in County Mayo.
Yeah, so I'm a beef farmer in County Mayo. We're finishing. So look, I understand the difficulties that are there. I'm very fortunate. I'm farming with my grandfather. We've a good herd of all Angus cattle. We started years ago as all Angus, but then once these bonuses came in, what we were kind of given for beef cattle, you could throw 200 or 300 on it, and that's what we were given for the same stock. I know you were getting it on the fair side, but with that inputs and everything increased. But so that's what I'm at full time. Yeah.
What's it like to be a young farmer in Ireland?
Contrary to the newspapers, it's great. It can be very, very difficult to drown out the negativity. But realistically, inside the farm gate, it's a lonely place. It's a very lonely place when things aren't going right. And as Elaine touched on there, this year has been already full of challenges. But to be quite frank, we haven't seen the start of it as we go into this prolonged winter. So yes, not to pull away from the positivity of the day, there is always great barriers. But there is also there's equal opportunity. I would always be glass half full kind of a guy. And I do see great, opportunity for growth in particularly the Western Seaboard. Like I, for one, have seen the West completely forgotten from an infrastructure perspective, and that actually has a negative impact on all of the farm organisations, but the farm gate, and more importantly, the farmer's wife might be gone.
Yeah.
So that's why it's vitally important to celebrate places or organisations like Macra.
Yeah, you need a vibrant community. It can't just be about the vibrancy inside the farm gate and the viability. There's more to a rural area, and we all know that coming from rural parts of Ireland.
Absolutely, and as you'll all be aware, look at Heller to Connacht. I'm still there, and as days go by, it gets more and more difficult. To stay around, to be the ones staying in the western side of the country. As a Claremorris man, I wouldn't be as far out as Achill or any of them places. But there is very, very unique challenges to that side of the country. And more importantly, as young farmers, the importance is viability and diversification. And if we can figure out a way to diversify beef farmers in this country, which is there's no silver bullet, but if you can't work 7 days a week, or 5 days a week on your farm, and that be your job, we need to relook at the situation. If you have to finish your part-time job on a Wednesday and go and try and squeeze a week's work into 3 days on your beef farm, and ask why there's so many accidents and difficulties coming up, and mental health because you forget to do one job that hits on to another thing, and this chain reaction of negativity and difficulty. And when you're by yourself in the farm, it's a very
that little
difficult
voice can get very loud, can't it, Rob?
And it absolutely does, and it just keeps growing.
You feel like you're the only one, and these things are only going wrong on my farm.
Absolutely,
and which isn't the truth in the vast majority of times.
And in Ireland, we're very, very focused on over-the-hedge farming. We're going to do what we need to do in order to look at our neighbours. We're not going to. It's not about reinventing the wheel; it's already there. But it's about how are we going to take these negatives, turn them into positives, and bear fruit,
And as you rightly said, Elaine, you were saying you saw the back of your silage pit. A lot of farmers saw that this year and probably were like, oh my God, have I done something wrong? And it's just circumstance. And this is the weather that we got. This is what we were thrown this year, unfortunately. But as Rob rightly says, there's a positivity. We need to make sure that young people want to come into this industry. There's plenty of other choices for young people when they go through school. They choose the leaving cert. They're going their CAO. They've all their different options to do. So farming, it has to really shine as an option for farmers.
No, it definitely has to shine as an option. It's up to us to show how resilient of an industry we actually truly are. I've been asked that question on every panel I've been at today. We have to showcase what's happening inside our farm gates. We have to show people the positives, but we also have to show them the negatives.
And the reality.
Yeah, that is the truth. We have to show the reality because we can all show this lovely picture, but we honestly have to show the reality of it. And it is up to us as the young people and the young farmers like Donal and Rob here that they need to showcase exactly what they're doing to show people that it is an attractive career. It is something that we can all stay in. It's a sector that we can remain in. Like for me, I went away, did physio. I know I can go back farming at home. Yes. That door is always open there for me. But it's now to show people that they can go into agriculture, they can go into farming, and they will have a future.
Well, we're not alone here in the tent. There's obviously a load of people in the audience. We're delighted to have them. But we're also joined by an award-winning farmer. Of course, that is Christopher Cahill, the 2024 FBD Young Farmer of the Year. Christopher, thank you so much for joining us here on the Agriland live stream here at the Ploughing Championships. Christopher, congratulations. And I suppose being a young farmer and now an award-winning young farmer, I'm sure you've lots to say about the future for farming.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the big thing is, I've come from an agricultural background, so I've been exposed to it for as long as I can remember. But I don't think I can express enough how passionate I am about agriculture. Obviously, I've made a career on it, but most importantly, I think the opportunities that are in it for people at a farm level and people at an industry level, like it's nearly an industry like no other, the opportunities that are out there for young people. So yeah, it's something I'm really, really passionate about.
Can you tell us a little bit about your own farming system, Christopher?
Yeah, so I suppose we, as I mentioned, we come from a farming background. Both my father's brother and my uncle's or my mum's brother would have taken over the 2 family farms, so I would never have had a farm to go straight back to. So went and done an undergrad and a master's in UCD in agriculture and joined industry for a couple of years. And I suppose I always had the burning desire, if you want to call it that, to go and kind of farm in my own right. And in 2021, an opportunity arose with the Macra Land Mobility Service, whereby Tony, my business partner, was an established dairy farmer. He was looking to take a backward step, and he has 2 daughters who weren't immediately interested in going full-time farming. So the 2 of us linked in with each other through the Land Mobility Service, and at the beginning of 2022, we established Dealside Farm, which is our farm partnership. And since then, it's been a busy 3 years, but it's been a very enjoyable 3 years. And we've expanded the business from initially milking about 110 cows to over 250 this year.
And winning the FBD Young Farmer of the Year, it's a huge honour, it's a huge accolade, and I've heard many people talking about it, the judges as well on the panel, huge praise for the standard and the quality, and a lot of people saying that the future is bright when we see entries and finalists like we had this year in this competition.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. For me personally, it's a massive. It's been absolutely massive. I can't understate it. All the people who have, in the last week congratulated me, wished me the best. People I never would have expected stopping mum and dad at football matches to congratulate me. So the impact it's had is absolutely huge. To be honest, I don't think a lot of people in my family knew the impact that it would have. So it's been absolutely phenomenal. In a lot of ways, it still hasn't sunk in. But yeah, I think when you look at the caliber of finalists there, there was 5 excellent other finalists there. I think any of them could have won it, to be perfectly honest. For example, there like Sarah Kelly at 18 years of age, like absolutely phenomenal what she's done. Like Dave Melody has made a career out of farm management. Seamus Lee has gone on and is milking goats, which I don't think is too common. So, I mean, it just goes to show you the variation that's out there and the opportunities that are out there. And I think agriculture is in a really safe place at the minute with the next generation that's coming on.
Elaine, I mean, I want to pick up on that we obviously need people like Christopher. We need enthusiastic young people like Rob, like Donal, like to drive on our sector. But as you said, there are challenges. And having a community like Macra provides around the country, the clubs, obviously you've Make the Move with the mental health initiative as well. And it's obviously something that you highlighted as part of your pre-budget submission. We need to make sure we're minding our young farmers as well. And I think Rob touched on that as well, about sometimes the isolation and the loneliness. We might associate that with maybe older farmers, but it does affect younger farmers too.
It affects the younger farmers hugely. Like Macra offers a social outlet for people in rural Ireland. If anybody is tuning in and want to join Macra, definitely do. Like the social aspect of it is well worth it, as the competitions. But just coming back on the whole mental health side of things, with the challenges that we face in the farming community, it does take a mental toll. It's the uncertainty that's there. And in 2018, Make the Move was started in Macra in North Tipperary. When they noticed a high rise of suicides in the farming community, in particular in males. And we relaunched it last year with a new logo and a new tagline. Make the Move is currently inundated with calls. Our helpline, unfortunately, is now a callback service because we cannot keep up with the calls that we're receiving. And the calls that we're receiving have all down to succession, worries about, we'll say, income. It's all about just, like as you said yourself, Aisling, that it's not just in your farm things are going wrong. It's everywhere, but nobody wants to talk about it. As well in Make the Move, we offer a subsidised counselling service, which is inundated. And Make the Move is such a vital service for rural communities, and especially the farming communities, and we are not government funded. We are solely relying on fundraising. Personally, I do not want to cycle Mizen to Malin ever again. There's clubs across the country that are doing fundraisers.
I don't either. I'm just going to say that too. No fair play to you.
But like It's now that we're relying on fundraising. That's no way to provide a service to our farming community. This is why I'm stressing the point to our Minister of Agriculture, Charlie McConalogue, and our Taoiseach. Somebody once backed them. We now need to be backed as the young farmers, and the whole of the farming community need to be shown support in this budget.
Donal, is it a lonely place to be a young farmer when things get tough?
31 days in the month, sure, 25 of them will be good and the rest of them will be bad. You know, it depends on the weather, depends on the day. It can be. Well, I'm blessed with Paddy every day, out every morning, 8 o'clock every morning, conversation. Talk to you every morning, make a plan what you're doing for the day. It's a great help.
Yeah.
You know, you see someone.
So that's what helps you cope with the tough times, to talk it out, to plan, to maybe see the light at the end of the tunnel if things are going
8 o'clock every morning.
Yeah.
That is. So, and talk it out. No, he'd make a plan and he'd always... It's just someone to talk to someone, you know.
Yeah.
Can't
Rob,
be
how
alone.
about yourself? Like when things get tough on farm, what's your advice to young farmers out there? Because I'm sure many of them will be listening and they'll think, you know, it's hard.
Well, just to come in on that, I suppose one of the huge things, and to put a positive spin on it, a lot of mental health issues, challenges on a farm, can come down to a very, you know, there's a few common grounds there regarding transfer of the family farm succession. That leads a poorly handled succession plan can lead to a severe mental health issue. You know, false hope in many cases. You know, and lack of that discussion can be huge. That's why land mobility actually can really turn things on the positive, because land mobility basically what it does is it joins up farmers that might be outpriced, like myself, like this man, who might be outpriced of, you know, the local farm because it might be heavily dairy. So you might have the opportunity to have Mickey Joe, who's farming beef down in the far side of the village, and he wants the farm while he's living. He has 2 daughters and they have no interest in the land, and good luck to them. But he wants the farm to be farmed the way that he has had it farmed. And he doesn't want to take the soup and give it you know, to high-paying dairy farmers. He wants to see the dairy farm. He wants to see the beef farm that he's had extended on. So what he'll do is he'll go to the Land Mobility Service. The Land Mobility Service will then, like an online dating website, like Tinder, like anything, they will find a match. And they will come in and they will join and they'll sit down, and Land Mobility will facilitate this discussion. And give the young people that are priced out of the market, maybe whatever issues went wrong, give them the opportunity to be a farmer. It's gone to a stage now where you're being priced out of being a farmer. And that should never be the case, because it brings so much money, as we're all well aware in this room. But it's vitally important. Through the Make the Move then, you have the door to knock on in your darkest hour, you know. And to be quite frank and honest, if you're between 17 and 35 and you're not in Macra, regardless of your job, you know, if you're from a rural area and you're not in Macra, you're missing out. You're missing a trick. You know, you're missing a structure, a support network, and very much so now. I suppose with the immigration at the moment, we're having an awful lot of people being left behind. And the beauty of Macra is it's like, you know, the dots. You know, you might have 10 young people in your area that you've never knew from Adam, but once you join Macra, that door opens. You know, you're not left on a cold winter's evening arriving into the pub to stare into a pint by yourself, or to go for a cup of coffee by yourself, or to look at the stars and wondering why you didn't make enough silage, or what weather didn't go your way, or why things didn't happen. You have a problem shared is a problem halved. And all we need is the friends. And as I always say in Macra, there's no strangers in Macra. There's only friends you've yet to meet. And every one of us has a common pain, I suppose, depending on where the country you're from. But we all have a common ground. And that's the beauty of Macra. To be quite honest, we don't usually have... We have to have bouncers, right, for insurance reasons. But I've never seen one been put to work. If you ever want a handy job, lads or ladies, go for
You're very well behaved, Elaine, your gang, are you?
Oh, very well behaved.
Christopher, I'm going to cross back to you again. I suppose in terms of that community with Macra, is that something that you've experienced as well?
Yeah, and I suppose it was something I was only chatting to Rob about last week at the event. When I was younger, I probably would have been more heavily involved with it. And I suppose with the nature of starting into the new business, you devote the time that's needed to get it up and going. But as part of that, I would have. We're now living beside the farm. I'm originally from Cavan. The farm is in Westmeath, so it's certainly something that we've kind of done the hard graft and got the farm to where it's going. It's certainly something I would like to do, would be get involved with maybe a local club and get a bit more involved in the locality that we are now, because I think no more than what the guys have said, like the friends that you can make out of, you know, that if something's going terribly wrong and you need someone to a bit of support, like to have that support network on your doorstep is absolutely huge in farming. No more than any other thing, you need to be able to turn to people. But I think in farming, more than anything else, you need to have plenty of people you're able to turn to. So that's something I definitely like to do in the future, is get involved in the local club where we are now.
Okay, we're going to open it up to the floor here, because in the Agriland tent we're definitely not alone, despite the lovely weather outside. And I'm going to open the floor there to a question. Thomas Duffy is joining us. Thomas, you're very welcome to the podcast. And what would you like to add?
Thanks very much. I'll go easy on the new president, but I suppose simple question: is the government, through both national and EU funds, doing enough for young farmers?
No. Simply no. They aren't. Because any time we go knocking on their door as the young farmers, the engagement levels we get are minimal. I have to say, as national president of Macra, over the last year and a half, have I been disappointed with some of the engagement that we have received as the minority group of 6.9% of the population under the age of 35 being farmers? Yes. Have we been taken seriously? Maybe sometimes. Have we got any of our asks delivered on? Minimal. Am I hopeful we get something in this upcoming budget? I really want to say yes, but I really don't know. And that's feeding into the uncertainty that's there for young farmers. Yeah. There's so much more that could be done. And that brings me back to the point that we got the Commission on Generation Renewal. If that was something, if you were a politician sitting here right now and that was something that you wanted to deliver on, that you wanted to ensure that you were doing something on generation renewal, the finer details will be out to the farming organisations and all relevant stakeholders. We would know the plan going forward, but no, we know nothing. We are left in the dark.
Because I was at a meeting recently and the point was made that time isn't on our side. You know, there's a huge proportion of farmers who are over the age of 65. They might want to take the option of maybe a retirement scheme. And equally, there's young farmers who are trying to get in and they're making these big life choices and they can't afford to wait either. So as you said, the clock is ticking here, Elaine.
The clock is majorly ticking. I have phone calls daily from Macra members. One stands out to me, a 32-year-old asking me should he go back and do an apprenticeship, because he doesn't know if he was actually going to take over the family farm or not, because the conversation around succession has not happened. I'm very fortunate. My situation at home, I knew exactly at the age of 14 what farm I was being given. Like, we need to normalise the whole conversation around succession. The conversation needs to happen earlier. I know it's a hard thing for parents to do, but it's something that everybody around the table should be talking about this. As my mother said to me, she'd prefer to sit at the table and talk out any conflict than not be there and for myself and my brother to fall out with one another. But when you think of succession, the minute you mention succession, what happens is silence. Because nobody wants to talk about ageing, nobody wants to talk about dying, and nobody wants to talk about conflict. But we have to normalise this. And it is brilliant to see that the other farming organisations are now speaking about succession. Now, there was one point that maybe I'm not overly happy with, is we are banging the drum for a succession scheme. We want the transfer of managerial role from the older farmer to the younger farmer, while the older farmer has been incentivised. Because there's no point lying. We cannot have a living on our state pension. The other organisations are calling for a retirement scheme. When you hear the word retirement, that's an exit. While we want, I suppose, a gradual exit and an entry. We want 2 points. While everybody else is banging the drum for retirement, we are going to continue going for succession. And as I told the Taoiseach, it's now time that our government puts success into succession in this budget.
We're going to go back to the floor now for another question. Go ahead.
Just wondering, for a young farmer, is there any chance of you try and go into a bank or any that they will not look at you to try and get, backing for a loan or anything to get machinery? So is there any chance you could help do something with that?
So we're talking about farm finance and I suppose young farmers going into the bank looking for finance. Elaine, what's your experience with that?
Look, great question, John, especially when I'm after coming from AIB and Bank of Ireland panels. Straight on to this one. Look, the banks are doing what they can do for finance. We as an organisation, we need to do more calling on help there for young farmers when it comes to finance. But I do think what would be interesting is to find out Rob and Donal's experience of going for finance, especially around farming. Yeah, Rob, how did you get on when you applied for finance or tried to get some finance?
I suppose regarding fairness and equality, there's a fair differentiation between a beef farmer and a dairy farmer. And you go into a bank. Do you know what? Do it for the crack someday. Go into a bank in the west of Ireland and tell them you want to be a beef farmer. And if they don't laugh, you're not in the bank. It's really, really difficult. There's no if, buts, or maybe. If you want to be a dairy farm, perfect. Yeah, I actually studied dairy herd management with the aspiration to change the farm into a dairy farm. And to come back on the bank side of things, we have some of the most expensive loans in the world in Europe for young farmers. So I wouldn't agree with that 100% either. But at the same time, if the business isn't viable, in the west of Ireland, if you can't get your cows out on the 1st of February, even for a day grazing, you're up against it. You're up against it. That's the crack. You're not going to get too much money. You're going to pay over 7% for it, and you're going to be happy about it. And that's the way we're kind of sold the pup here in this country. You're sold that you're going to have this opportunity to be indebted and paying off this for the rest of your life. And if you do well as a beef farmer in the west of Ireland, your grandkids might pay it off for you. But that's another side of the story, another flip to the coin. But if you want to be a dairy farmer, back to your question, 100% you can get finance.
Donal, what was your experience getting finance and accessing finance?
No, it was good now, in fairness, and we're dealing with the AIB bank. And the only blessed that I had so many income streams coming in, and I was able to balance out. I hadn't any real issues with it,
Yeah.
I was working.
Yeah. Absolutely. And is it something, because we did have the banks here as well, and they were saying there's access to finance and all the rest of it. And do you get calls very frequently from Macra members, Elaine, saying that they're struggling to access finance? And as Rob mentioned there, is it sector specific?
Yeah, we do get a few calls. I wouldn't say that we're inundated with calls now. We do get a few calls. Rob is correct by saying the sectors. Yes, there is a difference, but it really is down to two. I suppose who your advisor is in the bank and the bank manager. It seems to be the biggest thing.
Christopher, I'll bring you in here again. I mean, starting off as a young farmer, there's lots of overheads. I mean, there's a lot of costs on farms. There's high costs on every farm this year. But, when you're a young farmer starting out, accessing finance, what's your experience been?
I suppose it no more different than any of the rest of the lads. It was difficult, particularly because I was going to the bank looking for an unsecured loan. But without the security of a farm at home. And I was refused plenty of times, and I just kept knocking the door down and kept coming back and improving the business plan. And, I have to say, I do all my banking with AIB and Eamon O'Reilly in particular, and I could not recommend him highly enough. He's been a great support to us. I suppose the only flip side is that, yes, no more than what Rob said, the finance is probably dearer than in my circumstance because it was all unsecured. That was the big thing I noticed. You had to have a very, very robust business plan going to the bank, or else it was an immediate no. You had to have a really, really robust business plan and a good opportunity. And
did you find that disheartening, Christopher, or did you find it nearly encouraging and kind of buoyed you on to keep going? Or did you feel knocked back by it?
I suppose going backwards, even maybe as far as 2017, 2018, there would have came up the opportunity to lease a local dairy farm. At the time, I went for it and unfortunately didn't get it. But I remember going back to the bank at the time, and the one thing I said to him, I'm going to get another opportunity. So what do I need to do to be in the best position to be able to draw down finance? And the one thing they said, you need to put as much capital as away. Because you're coming in unsecured, you need to have capital to your name. So I suppose what the big thing I done that kind of spurred me on, I worked hard, I saved as hard as I could for 4 or 5 years when I was working in industry. And when the opportunity did come up, I was in a position to go to him with a business plan that I knew had been tried and tested and was going to stand up. And between having the capital in place and having a business plan that I knew and they knew was going to stand up, it actually was relatively easy that the final time that I went to them.
How have you managed with costs this year on farm, Christopher? Has that been tough?
It's been a tough year, particularly the springtime. We'd be on a mixed farm. We would have some low-lying peat ground, and a lot of that didn't dry out until into April. So that brought an awful lot of cost with it. We were feeding more meal than we normally would, and there was silage in the diet for longer. So our peak milk production was probably back. I suppose I'm only in the business 3 years. And the first year was great. 22 was fantastic. If we could have years like that every year, we'd be delighted. And 23 was the polar opposite. So we were after coming through a year where fertiliser was the guts of €1,000 a tonne, meal was heading for €500 a tonne. And even though, and milk probably been back at 33, 34 cent last year, even April this year, milk had risen to about 37. Fertiliser had begun to behave a bit more sensibly, and meal had come down. So even though peak production probably didn't hit the heights we would have liked to seen, costs were behaving themselves a little bit better. So we were able. It was a tough spring, there's no doubt about it. And I find in dairy farming, you're kind of chasing your tail for the first half of the year. You're kind of loading a lot of the costs through in the first half of the year. And when you can get through that and get to this stage of the year, you're in a better position to come out at the end of the year having made a few pound.
Fantastic. Well, Christopher, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on becoming the 2024 FBD Young Farmer of the Year. And I want to thank all of my guests on the panel today. Of course, Elaine Houlihan, the Macra president, Donal Phelan, who's a farmer in Kilkenny and has availed of the Macra Land Mobility Service, and also Rob Lally, who's farming in County Mayo as well. Thank you all so much for taking the time to come in, and thank you so much for our audience here as well in the Agriland tent for our second live podcast as part of our coverage here at the National Ploughing Championships. And now we're going to head back over to Agriland editor Stella Meehan.